Okay. This is John Reed at Salesforce Connection 2018. We are choking on fumes here at the final day. I'm with a guest that you will not even believe that I got this guy. I got Esteban Kolsky. What's going on?
Hey, glad to be here.
I'm here to ask you questions that no one's ever asked you before, that the entire enterprise world has been wondering about for years.
I was born in Argentina.
Yeah.
I am the same in my personal life as I am in my professional life.
Those weren't exactly what I had in mind. I was going to ask you, like, why are you such a grouchy prick, Esteban?
I'm not grouchy. I'm just... Look, when I joined Gartner, I went to boot camp, and I was told during Gartner boot camp that the highest level that a Gartner analyst could achieve is being labeled a curmudgeon by their peers.
Right.
There was only one person in entire Gartner history, Ken McGee, that had actually managed to get that. And he was... You think I'm grouchy? You should have met him. He was my role model.
Well, I would argue that the grouchiness in this context is a sign of an idealist who gets frustrated by hearing the same disappointing stuff.
I see my job very simple. My job is to hold the vendors' feet to the fire. And when I hear the same thing year after year, no progress, and they come back, 10 years from now, and they say, hey, this is a great new idea. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Keeping it PG. Are you kidding me? This is something we discussed, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and last year, and you guys haven't done anything on it. So that's what is considered to be grouchy. Then I'll be grouchy.
Right. So you're really an idealist that's frustrated about how far we are from what's possible.
I'm a purist. I just want nothing but the best.
Yeah. And as far as curmudgeons go, there's a few in your category, I would say, but it's not easy to get there.
No.
I might throw Brian Summers' hat in the ring.
Yep.
Dennis Howlett.
Yep.
That's about it.
But it's the same concept, right? I mean, these are people that really, truly want something better. They're not just being grudgy for the sake of being grudgy. They just want, we want. I mean, I'm going to put myself in that category. Exactly. We want something better. I was told that you can never give yourself the title of curmudgeon. That needs to be given to you by somebody.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can't be a self-appointed curmudgeon.
No, but I mean, I don't care what the title is. I mean, I've been called many things. Some of them even, that I can mention, right? But the idea is like, I want something better. I see what's possible, and I see how, vendors for the most part decided not to utilize the possible because it's hard and go with the simple that sells easy. And I just don't find that acceptable.
Right. And you're really one, I think, of kind of a few left standing as what I would call a true independent analyst, in that you run your own show, but you also do research, which is, there are a handful of independents who blog and such, but you actually try to do disciplined research on your own. How do you do that?
Very, very hard. It's not, actually, this is the thing, and I hate to keep referring to Gartner, but I was, like most of the people, I was lost in my life before I came to Gartner. Gartner gave me guidance and freedom to be myself.
They didn't sponsor this podcast, by the way, just so you guys know.
It was the best job that I had in the most horribly run company in the universe. I mean, the company is running in a way that you just want to leave every day, but the job was great. And I got trained in a way that, I see the value of primary research, even at a point where most research houses have gone away from that, right? Constellation is starting to do some now, but most people are going away. And primary research is what actually gives you insights that you don't get anywhere else.
Right.
So I talk to, like you do, thousands of people every year about all these different topics. And in addition to that, I get, some very, in my opinion, well thought out questions about specifics that then I turn into research reports.
So what research areas are you obsessed with that you're trying to learn more about?
Data is it's driving me crazy the last couple of years. I tried to make it, formalized, and you and I had a conversation about this earlier. I even blogged about it when I said, I bit on more than I can chew on that, right?
Yeah, you issued a very ambitious research agenda.
I did.
And when I read it, I was like, how the hell are you going to do that?
And I started
out you didn't do it, so I feel a little better.
Yeah, no, I started down on that path, and I found very, very quickly that with being a single person, it doesn't really give to doing that. So it was an attempt. Every couple of years, I tried to redo my life into a new model, and I found that what I call sponsor research projects. I have things that I want to do. I found people that are interested in the same concept. They give me money. I do it, and I keep total control and editorial responsibility and everything. And it works pretty well. It does, and it doesn't lead to very ambitious research agendas and then hand it to shelf. But going back to the question, data is the data users. What are called data users? What are people using data for? How are they using it? We're talking about AI. It's about data. You talk about digital. It's about data. Everything that we're talking about is about having clean data.
Well, right. And I just talked with a customer at a different show about their use of predictive, and they were trying to anticipate certain patterns of their customer base, and they said we got to 71%, and the reason they blamed it was they didn't have enough data sets and they didn't have enough quality data sets. Those were the problems that were preventing them from getting.
I would pick the second one over the first one. The data set is not the problem; it's the quality data set. The computer does what it's told, and the computer can only deduce what is given. Right? It's really computers are not smart. No matter what we try, they'll never be smart. They do what we tell them to do. We give them bad data; they give us bad results.
So you and I, before we started taping, we decided that we're not going to venture into the SAP versus Salesforce CRM wars as much as people might want us to do. In fact, I don't even view it as a war. I wouldn't even call it a skirmish at this point. Yeah. But
this is like the guy who got arrested and go to the prison. Right. He looks for the biggest guy in the yard and tries to slap him. Yeah. And the guy sitting there going like, mosquitoes? Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, you can always rewatch what's the HBO prison series?
Oz.
Oz. You can rewatch Oz if you want to get a feeling for that. But what I do want to talk about a little bit, since we are at Salesforce Connections, and they did, get us here, about customer experience and the role of data there, because I think that I struggle a little bit with this concept in the sense that I don't think we're anywhere near the kind of customer experiences that we really crave. And data is clearly a big reason, right? Like the disconnection in data, the inability to, when you call a company you've done business with for years, and they treat you like a friggin' stranger. Right. Like, so where do you stand on this whole customer experience and data? Where are we and where can we go?
Here's why you're right, that we're nowhere near where we should be, right? The main reason for that is companies are used to having control. That's the bottom line. Companies want to say, oh, you want to change your balance, you got to do this you want to change your address, this is 6 steps you need to do, right? And you want to do this is the process that we follow. And that's how they actually keep control, and they make it easier for them to operate. Surprisingly enough, customers don't like that. Paul Greenberg, who he's here, he's called the godfather of CRM. He wrote in CRM at the Speed of Light, the 4th edition that came out in 2009. He wrote that the biggest change in the last 20 years has been the change in control of the conversation. Not a change of the control of the conversation. So customers became more aware of what they wanted, and they're not afraid to say what they want, right? But when you want to keep control of the experience or the interaction, or whatever you want to call it, right? You end up finding a customer that is not willing to do that. Right. So then that dichotomy, that clash is what's actually putting us where we are today, where companies still want to keep to this illusion of control and delivering experience to customers. And customers are saying screw you, I want to do my own experience. I want to choose when I talk to you, how I talk to you, what I give you, what I get, and I want to choose how I do things. Right. And that is what we're actually seeing playing out right now, is that the next generation of customer experience. In 2001, when I wrote a report on customer experience that was 48 pages long, and it was mostly academic because we had no idea what we were talking about.
Right.
We have now 15, 20 years of actual experience doing these things, and what we realize is that customers will do whatever they want. We don't get to determine the journeys. We don't get to determine the experiences. The best that a company can do is create a platform so the customer can choose what they want the experience to be at that specific moment, which will be different next time, and then just do it. Instead of saying we're going to build the best experience and deliver awesome experiences, you can't. You don't know what the customer wants at the time that they're actually connected with you.
That's interesting. So you're kind of implying that the biggest barrier here is, I don't want to say ego, but it's kind of a control problem where you have
Let's call it ego.
Okay. Ego?
Let's call it ego.
You have to pull yourself out of the mix and focus more on how the customer dictates their own journey.
Here's the best way to determine why we have a problem. The second question that I always get when people want to talk about customer experience is who's in charge of the customer experience? right? Meaning, is marketing going to run it? Is service going to run it? Is sales going to run it? Who's going to run customer experience? And the idea that somebody has to create and run customer experience. I mean, I wrote a series in my blog post back in 2005 about it, because that was how we thought about it 13 and 15 years ago. But today, that's no longer the case. The customer is in charge of the customer experience, and the IT department is in charge of creating the platform, and we can't get anywhere in experience without data, because the data is what actually personalizes and creates the right experiences, right? That's the key.
Right. And in the post keynote chat with Chief Product Officer Brett Taylor, who's the keynote MC of yesterday's keynote on B2B commerce, you kind of pressed this issue a little bit with him, because you brought up the issue of why don't you talk more about end-to-end solutions, which I think fits right in with our discussion, right?
It does. That's exactly right.
As opposed to thinking about it in terms of here's your Service Cloud, here's your Commerce Cloud, here's your...
It all starts from the point that when you change things around and you said, okay, Mr. Customer, you're in control. Tell me what you want and how you want it, right? And I'll just make sure that you have what you need to deliver. Then you're not going to say, oh, you know what, I need marketing information, and then I need a salesperson to call me tomorrow, and then 3 days from now I need a service person to call me. You're there and you're like, well, I bought this product last week that's not working, but still I like the way it works when it works, so I want to get more of that. And while I'm there, also heard that you have a product coming next year, and I want to get some information. Traditionally, those are 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 different interactions. This is all in one. We moved from one-to-one interactions to continuous, where every single time that you get in touch with the company, you can do whatever you want. So then you need to reply to that, and that's not service by saying, oh, we're going to sell you service software, we're going to sell you marketing software, we're going to sell you sales software. It's service by saying we're going to give you a platform that actually creates this ability to interact with customers and let them build their own experiences any way they want.
By the way, readers, if you want to dig further, check out Esteban's ThinkJar blog on EstebanKolsky.com, where he just wrote a post recently on experience engagement, same difference, which gets into some of these issues. Now I want to talk about another post of yours, The 3 Eyes of AI.
Yeah.
Because a lot of vendors, I think, with the predicament we're talking about, they think they're going to solve this with AI and sort of hyper-personalization. So do you think that is part of the solution? And just in general, what is your gist of AI right now?
So without making myself look old, I was doing AI in 1980s, in the mid-1980s, when we called it then the fifth generation. The Japanese government decided that this was going to be the future of the world, and they invested, at the time, hundreds of millions of dollars, which is a lot more than most people are investing today, in understanding AI going forward the next generation. This is something we've been doing for more than the 1980s. From the 1960s, when we first got computers, we said, how can we make them resemble human intelligence, right? So we're not doing anything new. What we have different is the ability to process. The ability to process is 100-fold what it was back then. Back then, in the 1980s, the fastest computer was slower than my iPhone today.
We can crunch massive data sets, which plays to the strengths of certain kinds of machine intelligence, such as facial recognition, right? Yep. Where you need massive data sets.
We can actually take a picture and break it down into pixels, which we couldn't do really well back then. I remember when I was learning to program BASIC, I used to do pixel pictures, and they were horrible. But all these things, the data is the key, like I was saying before, but the processing power is what actually makes a difference in AI. Is AI going to change everything? I hope so. I don't like people. I like computers. They do what they're told. People do what they think they should do. There's a big difference here. If you're a business, you want someone who's going to do what is told to do. And automation is got to be the next wave in businesses.
I talked to a customer here who is working on a Einstein-powered, and of course we're using the term AI loosely, right? So we're really talking more about automation aspects. But
we're talking about basic elements of analytics, like predictive and image recognition, language recognition. But
anyway, they have service issues, which is volume, and they want to enable their call center to focus obviously on sort of either high-value customers or really tricky problems. So they're going to have a bot that they're going to put out there that's going to walk people through the basic stuff. And I thought it was interesting. I could see bots being helpful for certain things. I could also see myself as the kind of person who can get very frustrated and angry with the bot.
Not if to do the right thing. This is the key, right? For a bot to be effective, you need to know what's the outcome of that bot, and you need to actually inform the customer of that, right? So if you fly, pick your favorite airline, train or whatever, and they lose your luggage, and you want to get your luggage back, and they say call this number and it's powered by a bot, and they say go to this website and it's powered by a bot, they should tell you, all I can do is deal with your lost luggage.
Right.
Your frustrations and all this stuff, I'll listen to them, but they're not going to go anywhere from here, right?
Yeah, and we had an interesting conversation with this customer around whether they should disclose that it's a bot or not. I think they should.
Yeah, always.
And I feel that's important. But
yeah.
I think about it in terms of like my Alexa units around the house. Like the reason that works for me is because I figured out exactly what the limitations are, and so the interactions are satisfactory because I know. So I could see in a service capacity that could work, as like you're saying, as long as if I know it's a bot and it's solving a specific problem, and by the way, I can escalate it to the human properly. So it seems to me that it's more about design, right?
It is entirely about. It's about two things. It's about realizing, like you said, realizing the limits, right? People think that bots are like Star Trek computers. It's like the Star Trek or. If you were a Star Wars person, same thing. Computer, show me the Alpha Omega Galaxy, and just take me there, right? Like it knows what it's to do. But bots are more like single function, very very focused in understanding the language around one problem and one resolution. At best, they can do two, maybe three, but usually it's one-to-one. So what you end up as an organization, you end up with dozens, if not hundreds, of bots that handle these different problems automatically. And then how do you manage that is the next generation problem, right? But we've been doing bots, chatbots for business. They've been around since like the late 90s, right? The first chatbot was Eliza, who was in the 1978, I think it was, or like it was basically a psychotherapist that it was exactly what you think a psychotherapist should do, right? You say, I don't feel well today, and he said, why do you feel that way? Well, I feel like a little under the weather. What do you think is under the weather mean? It basically repeated your statements with the question at the end, and it was very successful. But real business bots come from like late 90s, early 2000s. And we're doing the same thing today that we were doing back then, except that, again, processing power, the ability to integrate more data, the ability to integrate more processes gives them greater ability to resolve the problems faster.
Right. Now, in your AI post, you said AI will never match human intelligence because it lacks the three I's.
Yes.
So now we're kind of talking about sort of more general AI intelligence of intuition, imagination, and innovation.
Right.
So you don't think those things can ultimately be programmed?
No, they can, because I actually say in the post, they can be programmed to an extent, but they're never going to be exactly the same, right? To me, AI is a real AI. Well, we're talking about predictive and prescriptive and all this. Those are just elements of advanced analytics. But true AI, like you get from advanced analytics to machine learning to true AI when the machine actually can think by itself. If you really think about the way we learn and how we do things, right? A lot of the decisions we made are based on incomplete data sets, and computers are horrible in incomplete data sets. So you can actually relax the rules a little bit. You can tell them, don't really focus on this part, but still the jumps that some of the examples that I put in my blog, Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin. He left a sandwich overnight in his lab. Who the hell is going to think that that's going to lead to solving half the world's problems, right?
Yeah.
This is the thing. It's like that's basically intuition. It's like I know I should throw this away, but there's something that tells me not to. You can program that level of uncertainty into computers. Computers are ones and zeros, and until quantum computing comes along and it shows something different, which we are decades, if not hundreds of years away, then we're not going to worry about anything more than what we have.
So are you telling marketers that they shouldn't use the term AI anymore?
I would tell them that, like I've been saying for the last 10 years, but nobody listens to me, so hey, we are. Dude, besides, we run out of smart people to name products after. We had Watson, and we had Einstein, and we have I forgot the other ones, but do we have a Newton? There's a Newton somewhere there, right? Yeah. So we got all the scientists and everybody. The only one left is Marie Curie, and I'm sure we're going to see it in a few years.
Yeah, I think the only thing that bothers me about this whole discussion so far is just this. I struggle a little bit with the empowered customer just because I think like it really varies by situation. Like for example, I'm heavy reliant upon Google services. I feel completely powerless in connection to Google.
Yep.
And I think one of the dangers...
You and I, we both are. I am the same. I choose the ones that I engage with, but I'm completely powerless.
Like, and Google clearly doesn't feel any accountability towards me.
Nope.
And yet I hear all this hype around customers are in control. I don't feel in control of Google at all.
But you are, because, I mean, you still have a choice, right?
Sure.
I mean, at the end of the day...
but I'm fairly locked in a certain sense. It's not that I could never walk away. It's just that...
Never forget how much you're paying Google.
Right.
I mean, that's part of the equation, right? I mean,
sure.
If you were to be paying Google, they would take your opinions into consideration a little more.
Right, yeah.
Because they know you can go away. But
I pay the airlines a fair amount of money. They don't give a shit about me.
Yeah, but that's a model that is so broken that is impossible to fix.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. I think this varies a lot by industry.
I actually had conversations with one of the major American airlines. One of the major airlines in America.
Let's just be clear. We're not talking about American Airlines. We're talking about...
We may or may not be, but I'm not trying to make it exactly. One of the major airlines in America. And I actually talked to director-level people at the call center, and they said, like, we're so tired of having to deal with people that complain about all this crap, and we take it to management, and management doesn't listen to us. So how do we solve that? I had this conversation that lasted almost a year with these people, in one of my projects, trying to guide them and get into that. You know what was the end result of this? Screw it. You got to ignore management. You got to do what you think that you should do. And they did for a while, and then management overpowered them and threw away all this stuff, and they went back to the thing. The thing, there's an endemic problem in airlines and many other areas, that is slowly going to be resolved. I mean, hotels used to be the same as airlines, but they're doing much, much better now.
Right.
They realize that their survival, stems from actually doing something better. Right. As soon as we get something that disrupts airlines like Airbnb did for hotels, they'll be more eager.
Hyperloop.
Exactly.
It's a function of anti-competition and lack thereof.
Why would I spend money and time and reduce my profits to do something that...
But I think there is an interesting dynamic. I mean, Google's probably not the best example to your point because I'm not paying Google a whole lot of money, though I do buy Android phones and stuff like that. But I think the clash against customer choice is the convenience of the platform.
Right.
So, you standardize on Apple Home and Apple devices, and so, now all your kids are using them. So you're really going to suddenly move away from Apple when go home, it's going to be a friggin' nightmare, man. You're going to face family protest.
If I could get my kids to get off Apple, I would be so happy, right?
You see what I mean?
I know.
There's an interesting form of lock-in that comes from a well-executed platform.
But you have to understand that Apple...
I'm turning this on you. You see what I'm doing? Because you're a platform advocate. So
I am. And I believe that if you look at two platforms that are basically doing the same, the two of the many that there are, right? You take Facebook and take Apple, right? Their presence in our lives is undeniable. It is. You can. I mean, I'm not on Facebook, but my kids use, I use WhatsApp, right? My kids use Instagram and they use WhatsApp, and we are in the Facebook world, even though we're not in the Facebook world. So I mean that exists. I use Apple devices. I mean, I have a MacBook, I have an iPhone. I resisted as long as I could, but shit, I mean, my laptops would die every 6 months. This thing I had for 4 years, and I took it to Apple once because it slowed down and said, "Oh, we're going to give you a brand new one because this one is one that we did that we're not happy with," right? So guess what? I mean, they do listen to you a lot more. They may not seem to be that way. They don't have smart bots crawling the world and making people happy. But once you get engaged with Apple, you get what you need in a fairly simple way. You don't get that from Facebook. You have a problem with Facebook, good luck. And the difference
is the inherent problem of data business models that are supposedly free.
Yeah.
What you're really paying for is a complete lack of power to address your situation.
You're paying for somebody to take your information and do whatever they want with it.
All right, before we wrap, let's talk about your enterprise software priorities for the next decade, which is a recent post. You came up with
5.
So which one jumps out offhand? we'll go
Suites a day. The last one, Suites a day.
Yeah.
End of the story. I mean, they all play into each other if you think about it, right? But
that's interesting because I see a lot of cloud suites lately.
You do, but you know what? That's because it's the last attempt to get some money before it goes away.
You think it's just the last gasp?
Yeah, and you know, without going back into the SAP versus Salesforce thing, this is the thing that upset me the most about SAP. It's like SAP has so much talent and so much technology they could use, and they go back to like marketing to cast a path for the company forward, which reflects what happened 20 years ago, and they couldn't make it work. But the thing is, like, platforms are the solution for the future, and you know, everything leads to, like, you know, for enterprise software, it's like the CIO is in charge of like consolidating clouds, aggregating data, and delivering a platform for the company so they can do it, so the employees can do whatever they want, any way they want, easily. That's
would you be a proponent then of a future where, if I'm trying to construct a particular set of services around, let's say, an order to cash scenario that I might plug and play from another?
Absolutely, you should.
So essentially, it's almost a microservice. I mean,
it's a microservices architecture. Yeah. We called it. You can go back. Yeah. I was talking about a Corba and ComDcom and SOAs, you know, the service center architectures and all that stuff. And I had the same message. I mean, in 1995, I wrote a position paper on Corba that exactly called for that model before we even had the internet, you know.
Yeah.
And still looking at the same thing today. It seems like technologies are advancing, but what it's not is our ability to actually grasp what the technology can bring and do it. And
I tend to agree, but the most effective rebuttal I hear to that vision is sort of what happens to the one throat to choke thing that a lot of customers like, right? If they're assembling microservices from different vendors and something breaks, like what happens then?
It's called a CIO.
Oh, nice.
You get a smart CIO, which I know a lot of them right now. You get a smart CIO, and they're not afraid of that. They don't care about one vendor, one throat to choke. They want to become the responsible one because they know that the platform they're building is going to deliver what they need to deliver, and it's going to be flexible enough. But to do that, you need to have the cooperation of the vendors to charge your licenses that are, like, you know, bearable and useful in that type of model. Because then, if not, you end up with a lock-in from any vendor. Pick anyone. They'll have a lock-in in what you do that is mostly done by licenses. Yeah. You're not going to pay $250 per person to access, you know, a marketing data model that is restricted to very few operations, and then pay $250 per person to do like one more function that they don't do. You're going to go with the subpar function and like suffer through it. That's what a suite basically does.
So I think I would modify your prediction slightly and say if you have a strategic IT investment, then software suites are dead, because I think, for example, smaller companies, SMBs, I think are going to be fairly suite dependent in a lot of cases. Companies without IT departments are going to be fairly suite dependent, I think. But companies that use IT for a variety of strategic initiatives, including like building their own smart devices and smart applications, I think those are the majority.
Those are the leading edge.
And that's.
But don't forget SMBs, right? Which are like 60-70% of the world, not just the United States, but the world. SMBs, they require a use of technology that is nowhere near what, like, you know, the large vendors provide.
Exactly.
Right? And it's not about having a reduced set of elements from the same platform. It's about doing a flexible platform that allows you to do whatever you need. So this is a revolution that is going to be, like, you know, more grassroots than any other one. It's going to be led. So far, cloud adoption is 96-97% in SMBs and less than 30% in large enterprises. And we're going to continue to see this. This is going to be a revolution that's going to be led from below by SMBs actually changing the way they work, and customers saying to companies, why can't you be more like them?
Right. So, and just whipping through the rest of these, some of these we've kind of covered, but your first one is sustainability is job one. That's really all about the traction that cloud computing has got to build sustainable architectures, platforms, and leverage of the new normal. We kind of covered the platforms part and the ubiquity of platforms that are going to be necessary for the kinds of services you're describing. Budgets are different. You kind of talked about how budgets have come back, but the multi-million-dollar, multi-year type of project has sort of gone away.
Right. So we're doing piecemeal approach.
Iterative, you know, prove it, small wins, build momentum.
I haven't talked to a single, CEO, CMO, CIO, who are the purchasing agency days, who said, I'm just going to buy the product. They all buy pilots and they slowly grow them, you know. And companies are getting around that by selling enterprise licenses for the same cost of a pilot before, so they can say that they're actually embedded in the organization. And then they try to ensure that lock-in.
And I want to talk just briefly before we wrap about your final one in the list, the rise of the citizen programmer. I found this interesting because obviously this has gone through a lot of iterations in terms of what people talk. Now it's about low code,
no code. Yeah.
And this has also been discussed for a long time. Do you think we're finally turning a corner on this? And if so, why?
If an organization adopts a platform-focused world to see the way, which is the world, which is what we discussed, right? I mean, you get the best services, you deliver. Then, any person can program any solution they want. If you don't, if your platform becomes, an aggregation of clouds that is basically still with locking into like data models and still locked into like, functionality that is subpar, no, you can't. So, I mean, do I see that we're turning the corner? I do. I do believe, and I do see more and more organizations that are giving their users mobile devices and like development environments that are like click and, what was it they say today? Tapping, not typing, right? I mean, they're basically click and tap to build your own application for what you need. Any person who does a job needs literally 5 to 10 data points and 3 functions to do their 90% of the job that they do.
Right.
Why would you give them an application that has like, huge screens with lots of stuff that never gets used?
Right. And I think developers are more and more reliant upon building blocks as well. When you think about they all have predictive libraries. They're not building a lot of this stuff from scratch anymore.
The more Twilios that show up in this world, the more Trulies that show up in this world, the more libraries that are open source and available, the more they can do whatever they want. And the largest growth in budget in IT departments has not been infrastructure but developers, because they're all going back to like building the old components, building their own infrastructure that they need to do.
Well, I'm looking forward to a bunch more low-code, no-code PR emails in my inbox. This should be,
no. PR is outside of the bounds of this discussion.
That should be great for me. In my last Enterprise Hits and Misses, I described you as an enterprise gadfly, and then also in a strike-through, I described you as a wildebeest, and I linked to the article because it was funny because it refers to wildebeest as an implausibility, which I think is a good
which is, by the way, my LinkedIn bio
I like
now.
It's the implausible Esteban Kolsky.
Thank you. And it became my LinkedIn bio. My LinkedIn bio says, nice. I've been officially deemed an implausibility, yet I'm here.
And the other phrase I liked in this article on wildebeest, they refer to them as the itinerant enigmas, which I think is also potentially a good one for you.
I thought it was a fantastic article, man.
Yeah.
I've been called many things, but that's probably the one that fits the best.
Anyway, folks, that's a half an hour with the implausible Esteban Kolsky. Thanks.
Thank you. Half an hour. Wow. Thank you so much.
Later. Bye.